Compost has a magical effect on your garden, and if you want to make your own compost and get it cooking like this one, you'll need to consider its location, what you put inside it, and most importantly, what you're going to need to make it possible. Now, compost is the breaking down of organic matter, or for most people, fruit and veggie scraps, into a form that can resupply their garden with nutrients. And the first tip I'm going to give you in this process is that you need to consider its location. Now, the process of composting is a chemical reaction, and if you remember from middle school science class, if you add heat to a chemical reaction, you can speed it up. So make sure your compost bin gets some sun. If it gets about half a day's sun, that's great. If it gets a full day's sun, in the hotter months, you may find it dries out. Next tip on location, avoid placing your compost too close to trees. That may rob it of its goodness. You may find that the roots of that tree will get in or suck the goodness out of it. Contrary to this, I place my compost bin right next to trees that I want to feed. So mine's sitting right beside my mandarin tree. My second bin is sitting next to a mulberry tree, and both of these are having some pretty handy outcomes. Next consideration you need to make when composting is what you put inside. So fruit and veggie scraps are the go-to. The thing you need to consider, scientifically they say, is a ratio of 3 parts brown waste to 1 part green waste, or 4 to 1, depending on what you read. If you put in too much green waste, you'll end up with a wet, soggy compost heap that starts to stink. The more brown materials you add, the more they'll wick up this moisture and help you aerate your compost, and you've got a nice even breakdown of compost. Things to avoid putting in your compost: I would avoid chunky sticks. Also avoid weed seeds. Weed seeds are a pest. The most important tip for composting is to make sure you've got 2 bins. Now with composting, you're going to fill one bin up and you're going to let it break down before you can actually use that compost. So once it gets to the top, what do you do with all those veggie scraps in the meantime? The thing you need is a second bin so you can start a second pile of compost. In addition to this, you're going to need a spiralizer. These things are awesome for bins that you place on the ground. A spiralizer is a weapon. It will turn and aerate your compost and get you good, even compost breakdown and speed up the breakdown of your compost. This will save you, if you have an on-the-ground compost bin, shoveling and turning your compost repeatedly. These guys are a must. And finally, there's a truckload of styles of bins you can get. The key thing here is it doesn't matter what style, as long as you can seal it up, because you don't really want pests getting in and getting into your compost and eating your scraps. You don't want to feed the local possums or rats. So make sure you can pop a lid on your compost, whether it's on the ground or tumbler. It doesn't matter either way.